January, we actually invited out a partner and a customer who came and spoke to the company. And I just wanted to ask if we could have Jason come join me on the stage. So you got a mic. So Jason came with his customer Amit. So Jason, could you tell them kind of a little bit of Amit's story that you relayed to us?
Yeah, so Amit is a retail independent pharmacist. He's been that for the last 25 years. When I met him, he was just trying to figure out how to get Keap implemented in his business. And I had like an hour-long session with him. He's like, man, Jason, my brain hurts after this call because there's just so much to try and learn and understand. And I'm like, I get it. It happens to almost everybody. And so, you know, it wasn't Keap's fault. It wasn't the coaching aspect of it. It's the fact that he's been an independent pharmacist for 20 plus years of his life. So all he's known is pharmacy. He doesn't know marketing. And so that's pretty much how Amit and I got started. And so when we met Amit, he had 0 emails. And when I asked him how many patients he said, he said, oh, I got 1,000 patients. I was like, okay, all right. So 0 emails, 1,000 patients. Come to find out, he actually had 5,000 patients, but he didn't know it because he wasn't managing his database. He didn't know what a CRM was 3 years ago. And so, you know, one of the first things that we identified with him is like, what's some of his existing assets and resources in his business? And we identified that he had a lot of foot traffic because he had an urgent care right next to his pharmacy. And so one of the first things we did was we said, okay, you have 0 emails, but you have all this foot traffic. So we set up 2 Keap landing pages and we put them on iPads. And so now every time somebody walks in, they check in and they get an email, they get a video, and they get a text message from Amit saying, hey, welcome to Avalon Pharmacy. And so we started capturing all of the database information like name, email, phone number essentially. But the funny thing is he wasn't capturing emails because he thought his patients were like 120 years old and like didn't use emails, right? Like the reality is they were like 60. And I said, yeah, there's probably a portion of them that don't, but let's set up 2 iPads. Let's do one with email, right? And email and phone number. Let's do another with phone number. So if they don't have an email, we'll capture both. Well, 3 years later, he now has 6,000 emails and he has 8,000 patients. So 3 years, yeah. And one of the things that I would say to each of you guys is if you're not really assessing your client's existing assets and resources like a foot traffic, you could have missed out on, we could have missed out on a massive opportunity to grow his business further. But we identified that and said, okay, let's solve that problem. You have 0 emails, so now let's start and let's help you to capture emails. So that was the first thing we did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so in just the conversations with him, you identified this foot traffic. What happened with the emails after that? What did you do with them at that point?
Yeah, so once we captured the emails, we then started building out lifecycle automation across the other areas of his business. So so one of the things we did is created a date and timestamp. So every time somebody comes in and checks in, we now know if 60 days later they haven't come back, they get an automated email and a text message saying, hey, we miss you. You haven't been in a while. We hope you're doing okay. And then we realized that, you know, I'd asked him, I'm like, hey, what are you doing for engagement? Have you done anything? He's like, yeah, I send out postcards to people like every once. So I'm like, okay, if you only have addresses, I can understand why you do that. But what we did is we actually created what's called a Minute with Amit, and we did a weekly video newsletter every week. And we did this because one, he wanted to create more engagement for his patients. And 2, when he signed up for Keap, it was right at the start of COVID. So doctors' offices are closing down, businesses are shutting down, people are afraid to leave their home. So we said, okay, we're gonna go into their home and we're gonna create videos. So Amit would pop in front of a camera and he would talk about, you know, COVID, the variants, the vaccinations. He'd talk about high blood pressure, avocados, you name it. Like he pretty much talked about it and he told the benefits of what it could do for them. And that created a sense of community and engagement that he hadn't ever had before. And so that's one of the things we started to do is say, okay, let's create more engagement for him. And it was the power of the brand, because obviously his name is Amit. So we said Minute with Amit, and we did a weekly newsletter, a video. And so it created this sense of community that pharmacists aren't used to engaging with their patients. So.
And if I remember right, there was also an element of the people coming in, how they transitioned their information.
Yep.
Did you guys figure that out?
Yeah, so during our assessment, we identified some like KPIs for his business, said what's going to help to move the needle forward. And he said, well, if I can get more people transferring their prescriptions to me, and I can make it very easy. So we set up basically a prescription transfer campaign that allowed them to easily transfer their prescriptions over. So what's exciting about this is that Amit's in a town of 20,000 people, and he has 8,000 contacts. So we captured 8,000 patients. So he has 40% of the population coming to him in a small town of 20,000 people, and that's from the power of Keap automation and lifecycle automation.
So when I was, it was a company meeting, Jason and Mitt were here, they're kind of sharing their story, we had met with them as a product team, and I was just sitting back listening, and the three things that like really stood out to me, and Jason touched on them. The first was, they found a way to easily collect the information, right? They set up the iPads, they fill out the information, and they'll bring that in. The next thing that stood out to me was they also leveraged, and Amit talked about this experience of the engagement that Jason was talking about, where it'd follow up with these patients and send them, one of the easiest campaigns ever, right? Happy birthday. And all of a sudden he was getting calls. He talked about an 85-year-old woman or something like that.
There was an 84-year-old woman that I think her husband was deceased, she was alone, and she called Amit and she said, "You are the first person in 4 years to ever wish me a happy birthday. So thank you for what you're doing for people like us in this small town, in this community." And the thing, Matt said a moment ago, what are you grateful for, right? What are you appreciative of? And I think what we are really grateful for at the automation agency is the impact that we get to make, right? Because when we sit down in front of that computer and we start to design and build automations, we're not just building automations. We're creating a societal impact beyond the person. Because when we make a difference for Amit makes a difference for his patients. His patients then react differently, they think differently, they appreciate differently. And that's what's really been amazing for us and such a great reward to see Amit grow. Because Amit's greatest fear was that all he would ever be doing is filling prescriptions. And now, after 25 years of doing that, he's now automated 95% of his business. He's actually going to be here today, but he was on vacation with his family. So, today I wanted to stand up here and share his story because it's an amazing one that we can create that level of impact that reaches beyond just businesses. It reaches the communities and economies at scale.
And with that community, one of the big problems that you started to run into, so we talked about collecting the leads through the iPad and the simple form. Then there's the engagement. The last piece was they started to identify that there was a challenge where people would come in and they'd want to actually convert their prescriptions from whatever big chain pharmacy that they were going to Amit, so they could get that personalized touch. And you can talk about it better than I can. What was it that you all set up?
Yeah, so we set up a Keap landing page again, using the ability for them to be able to simply fill out some basic information about their prescriptions, submit that form, it then notifies his staff immediately then calls and makes it really simple and easy for them to transfer their prescriptions. Whereas you try to go to like Walmart, Walgreens, etc., it's a pain in the butt. Like they make it hard for you to do that. And so Amit said, "Hey, let's do this. Let's create a way for us to create better conversions and get more patients transferring their prescriptions, because that's a key revenue driver for them."
Awesome. And I know you talked about he's automated 95% of the business, 8,000 contacts in a town of 20,000.
Yeah.
What are some of the other major changes? Like in particular, he signed up during COVID.
Yeah. So when he signed up during COVID, we started also focusing on because everybody was afraid to leave their homes, right? So he does free delivery. So we said, okay, well, let's re-emphasize that, right? Let's not put our heads in the sand and hope for the best. Let's strategize how we can get your brand, your product, your pharmacy out there. So we started re-emphasizing the importance of free delivery, free prescription transfer, and that worked out really well.
That's awesome. And you mentioned it a little bit of where Amit's kind of headspace is now. He was concerned about just always being there to fill prescriptions.
Yeah.
What's he planning on next, or what's happening with him now?
Yeah, so Amit is actually being nominated for Pharmacy of the Year, and we've been invited to speak in Las Vegas in front of 2,500 other pharmacists so that we can help to share the strategies that we've used and done for his pharmacists. Yeah.
And Amit and Jason mentioned this to me. If you just go on Facebook and look at the reviews of Amit's pharmacy, and then look at the other chains, or even think of your personal experience with a pharmacy, you might see a slight difference there, and you can speak to it further. But
yeah, so I asked this question to everybody about 2 months ago. So who here has ever heard of their pharmacist like what Amit is doing? Don't know him by first name, right? No one has raised their hand. We are disrupting the pharmacy industry because guess what? When you drive up to the pharmacy, what do they ask you? Not hello, how are you doing? What's your birthday?
Right.
What's your address? We are helping him in his drive-through to now engage their patients by saying, hey, welcome to Avalon Pharmacy. How are you doing today, right? Like just that little change, right? That's why he didn't have any emails, because the only thing they collected was birthdays and addresses. And I'm like, well, we can do things with those, but we need to collect some emails so we can start engaging them.
That's awesome. I sat back and was like, this is such a great example of our product vision in action. So thank you for all that you've done for Amit and for being willing to come share the story with us.
Thank you.
It's awesome, Jason.
Yep, appreciate it.